Hello, I'm Nahyun, and we are going to present the theme of gender stereotypes. The table of contents is as follows. Introduction to topic and article, emotional reading, critical reading, possible actions we can think of the issue. First, what is a gender stereotype? It's a relatively stable belief and image that people have each gender as a whole of traits and roles considered to belong to men or women. Then, have you ever thought that the job or role is determined by the characteristic? What professions do people mainly have gender stereotypes in mind? First, consider bus driver, a car doctor, kindergarten teachers, and secretaries. And there are examples of firefighters and nurses in the article. Have you thought of classifying these examples as men's work or women's work? Our group is choosing article about inequality in having gender stereotypes in their professions and is trying to proceed with the publication. The following is the content of the entire article we selected. To summarize this, when working as a leader, boys are likely to be responsible, but girls are likely to be bossy. In other words, men are considered competent and women are considered aggressive. Therefore, that such gender biases harms all of us and that we stereotype our profession in particular. The writer mentioned firefighters and nurses, and she thought that the firefighter is a man's job and the nurse is a woman's job. They say these biases also affect employee outcomes and both men and women experience discrimination. Therefore, the writer conducted research on microfinance loan manager and which is gender balanced and ambiguous. Financially related parts are masculine and the legacy of social service parts are feminine, so there is no preconception on a particular gender. And the research was conducted on the authorities' measurement to investigate the missing payment rate to microfinance loan manager. The result is that if the first major is women, the client often misses the payment and is considered the authority is low. Moreover, even if the first major is women and then change it to a male major, the authority is still low. In this case, both men and women experience irrationality, but if the first major was a man, the authority was evaluated as high. Therefore, if a client perceived the microfinance loan manager as a woman's job, it is still disadvantageous compared to a man's job. In conclusion, men in women's job with stereotype and vice versa can harm all genders.
Thank you for the introduction. I'll be taking from here. Hi, my name is Yun Song, and I'll be talking about emotional reading. First, I'll be talking about emotional engagement in our group. Our group talked to each other experience in gender discrimination in life. The first experience was unpleasant memory in elementary school. When she was in elementary school, there was a boy who borrowed money from other students. This boy tended to repay money back to male students fast, but tended to repay back to female students compared to male students slower. This attitude difference to different genders made other students unpleasant and angry. The second experience was statement of coworker in part-time job. When she was working in a kids cafe with her coworker said that some of the customers may get irritated or angry to female workers compared to male workers. Through this, she could see how people perceive jobs differently by gender. The third experience was finding through browsing the internet. When he was browsing the internet to find information about teachers, he could see that most of the pictures was tended to have female teachers in it, rather than male teachers. Though this is not discrimination, he could see how social cognition about specific job affects it. The fourth experience was experienced when working in a welfare facility. When he was working in a welfare facility, he could see how people view differently by gender. While some of the workers said that both genders have to work equally, some said that male have to work more harder jobs like carrying things and delivering things. And some female workers tended to work harder like male workers. Through this, he could see how people perceive differently to gender. The second part is examining why we feel emotion and what we feel. The overall views of our group is that society is changing for gender equality. But as we see in the article, we could see that society has much more ways to go. Perception of people needs to be fixed about gender, and people, not men and women, have to coexist, not fighting each other on each other's side. Through this article, we empathize our emotion about anger, discrimination of people, and uncomfortableness of society has much more ways to go, and so a sadness that society is changing but not changed enough. Third part is striving to understand others' opinion. In the article, there's example of loan managers in America. These managers would feel unfair by gender discrimination and dispirited by how people see not their work, but by gender, and depressed by this gender discrimination. We could think of as teachers in school because we are English education. Female teachers have discriminated treatment from students compared to male teachers. And female teachers may have stereotypes leading to bad promotion. And male teachers can get unwanted position because of their gender being male. And there can be social cognition with female students, so they have to be aware of it. The fourth part is analyzing how emotions are created and circulated. Emotions are created by knowledge of personal background of society and world, with reading of others' intention and knowledge. Through this knowledge, the person will read an article of writing and receives it positively or negatively. In this article that we discussed, there are examples of gender stereotype view, which remind us of our own experience in life. And examples of specific job related to gender discrimination consciously remind or recognize us of gender discrimination that can be in our society. Thus, emotions are created and connected to our personal experience. And these emotions will circulate through sharing opinions with one group. The final part is focusing on the performativity of emotions to achieve social justice. First, there is social practice like eliminating gender discriminating words like 여배우 두 배우, 여경찰 두 경찰 in Korean, and fireman or firewoman to firefighter, and waitress or waiter to server in English. And there are things like division of words of each gender. Countries like Spain and France use dividing words to have each gender a word. And there can be personal practice like improvement of cognition of personal behavior and eliminating gender discrimination. We will think about this much more later.
I'm the third presenter, Jian Yu. From now on, I'd like to talk about an analysis of this article in terms of the critical reading, which is simply called CR. My presentation will be followed by writer, purpose, possible bias, reliability, and point of view. First, I will talk about the writers of this article. This article was written by two writers, Sarah Dabod and Laura Dworling. Sarah Dabod is Associate Professor of Sociology at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and Laura Dworling is Assistant Professor of Strategy and Organization at McGill University. This article originally appeared on The Conversation and is republished under a Creative Commons license. The next topic we are going to talk about is the purpose of the article. As you can see from your earlier reading of the article, writer is informing the readers of the problem of gender stereotype in jobs to persuade them to be aware of how societal bias can harm all society. Next, we could look at many possible biases in this article. First, in this article, there is no detailed reference to excerpts of papers, quantitative studies, and qualitative studies. Second, the writer told the story of loan managers at the microfinance bank as an example of gender stereotypes. However, one particular bank in Central America cannot conclude people's perception of gender. Third, the article only mentions the disadvantages of having a man in a job that is perceived as a woman's job, and the opposite is not mentioned. Lastly, in the introduction of the article, there is a story about a society in which the response varies depending on the gender of young children. But in fact, in elementary school, women grow faster than men, and they are taller and more mature, so they are more likely to lead among students. We can judge this article as an unreliable article from the perspective of the possible bias mentioned so far. The writer has a negative view of stereotypes about gender-related jobs and is not favorable to the attitude of society in which women not discriminated against compared to men.
Now I'll continue the presentation. I'm the last presenter, Ko Kwon-ung. You saw emotional reading and critical reading of our team. As you saw, we approach it emotionally first and critically second. In emotional reading, we try to think about our experiences with gender stereotypes and to figure out why we felt certain feelings. To understand other people's feelings, we thought about the teacher. Since we are all the students of the educational department, we thought understanding their feelings would be better than other professions. After that, we considered the creation and circulation of the emotion one by one. About the performativity of emotion, we searched for some cases that struggling to eliminate the gender stereotype and other cases that still dividing the genders into two parts. In critical reading, we analyzed the article and organized the contents. While critically reading the article, we found out there are too many possible biases, and it made us keep thinking the article is somewhat unreliable. While talking about the article, we found some issues that need to be talked about. First, of course we know the gender stereotype is bad, but to make it disappear, what we have to do is very ambiguous. For example, we only can say our cognition should be improved, the law should be fixed, or there should be an aid for discriminated people. But it is just ideal words, so it doesn't have any actual power. So we need to think about a specific solution to get rid of the gender stereotype. Second, in changing our cognition of gender, there is another problem that people talk about. It is reverse discrimination. To satisfy everyone is impossible, but discrimination should disappear. If we do not treat each gender fairly, then the problem of discrimination and reverse discrimination would appear. What can we do to make our society a better place where gender discrimination does not happen? Maybe this is the task for us to think about. Thank you for listening our presentation.